in person under the new circumstances of how we have to conduct public meetings. So we appreciate that. We do have a number of people who are joining us by electronic connection. So appreciate you also tuning in. Welcome. And we have a fairly full agenda today, so we'll jump right into that.
Do you want me to do a little housekeeping?
No, please go ahead. I was just going to ask, what housekeeping do we need to do?
So for those of you who are in the room, as I mentioned in the email, the restrooms are on the other side of the building, outside of the secure door. So if you need to go out, there is a badge, a visitor's badge right there that will allow you to go out and then hit the entryway to come back in. So that's the housekeeping. And then a reminder that we are going to do a group photo. So I'm sorry, those of you who are not here, that you won't be a part of it. But right after the meeting, let's meet outside on the lawn, right out front there, and we'll take a group photo. Okay? So that's it. That's all that I had.
Okay, perfect. And I think I probably should remind everyone who's online, who is a representative on this committee, you are not allowed to vote because you're not here in person. Is that correct?
For this meeting.
For this meeting.
For this meeting, and going forward in the future, there's another ruling that we can take into account so that if we need to use that option, we can. But right now, just because we have a quorum, I think it's easier if we just limited the voting to this committee in the room.
Right. Okay, very good. All right. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the new chair here. I'm assuming the position from Barbara, who did such an eloquent job for us for the last 2 years. So thank you, Barbara. I'm Norm Groot, and I'm representing agriculture on this committee. And so we're ready to do the roll call.
Great, thank you. Janet Brennan. Here. Kevin Dayton.
Here.
Tom Raleigh.
Here.
Caleb
Rick
Bumba.
Fire is in Argentina.
Caleb Bumba. Victoria Beach.
Here.
Jesus Valenzuela. Rod Smalley.
Here.
Cliff Bassnett. John Huck. Jonathan Giesler. Scott Waltz. Barbara Meister. Here. Norm Groot.
Here.
Brett McFadden.
Here.
Paula Getzelman. Chris Ferrara.
Here.
Steve Snodgrass.
Here.
Robin Lee. Natalie Olivas. Sean Heppard. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Do you mind also acknowledging going through the alternates, because there are some alternates here. Let's just make it for the record,
Okay.
because there is one that's here that's representing. So if you don't mind.
Howard Fossler. Rick Griffin. Rick Hoover.
Rick's the one that's in Argentina.
Teresa Sullivan. Andrea Monzo. Glenn Scheller. Christine Odell. John Bailey. Monica Lau.
Here.
Rachel Saunders. Paul Arnado.
Here.
Darren Fort.
Here.
Carol Kenyon.
Here.
Rosemary Bernard.
Here. It's actually Rosemary Barnard.
Rosemary Bernard. Thank you. Lori Eby. Gabriella Oyoa. And Keith Severson.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Glad we got that formality done, and we'll move into public comments. Any member of the public may address the committee on any item not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this committee. Under this item, each member of the public is allowed 3 minutes to address concerns. Comments in this item on this agenda. Comments on items in the agenda may be given when that agenda item is discussed. Persons who wish to address the committee for public comment or an item on the agenda are encouraged to submit comments in writing to Maria@tamsi.org by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting, and such comments will then be distributed to the committee members prior to the meeting. So do we have any members of the public who would like to make comments that are related to items not on the agenda? If so, raise your hands if you're electronically connected. All right, not seeing any hands going up, then we'll move forward with the agenda. At this point, we have the consent agenda, which is approving the draft minutes of the February 15th committee meeting. Those were distributed prior to our meeting here today. Hopefully everyone got a chance to read them.
I'll move adoption. Actually, I have a correction on item 5, and that the roundabout at Jocelyn Canyon. It was, made negative comment about that proposal. Needs to be noted in the minutes. Other than that, looks good.
All right, and you had a second?
Yes, for the table that shows participation of the voting members, at least 2 of the dates on the top are wrong. For example, October 22nd, I believe is October 18th, August 22nd is August 16th, and I didn't look at any of the others.
And then there is another correction. Rosemary, you had a correction for the spelling of your name. Do you mind?
Yes, I actually agree that the Jocelyn Canyon roundabout was discussed and there, so that was one. And then my name is spelled Barnard. So that needs to be corrected as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments or corrections for the minutes? Otherwise, we have a motion with a couple of corrections that has been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next,
I don't see Edry on, so we're calling you now. So if anybody moves to the next item, then
sure. All right, then we are going to shuffle the agenda a little bit and move to item number 5, which is receive a presentation on Measure X 5th year audit, which is 21-22 results and the Measure X annual report. So each year we undertake an audit of all the municipalities that are receiving funding from Measure X and put together a report that goes into the annual TAMC report that's issued by this agency. And so this year, the audit subcommittee met and reviewed the information that was provided by staff related to the compliance of all the different municipalities, as well as the, I have to say it correctly now, the county of Monterey. I have to fix the building name, by the way. So what happens here is the subcommittee reviews those particular qualifications or requirements of funding. And there's a number of different categories that go into this. And so the plan itself that was passed in Measure X specifies that 60% of the collected funds are allocated to the county and the 12 municipalities that are participating for local road maintenance, pothole repairs, and leaking projects, while 40% is dedicated to our regional safety and mobility projects. Measure X funds are not intended as a replacement for county or city funds, but as augmentation to those projects involving local roads, streets, and sidewalks. So this year, the subcommittee reviewed the information and a compliance report is required. Oh, it's on the screen now. Thank you. From the county and the 12 municipalities that received the funding. And this year, the subcommittee reviewed those reports and found that the cities of Salinas and Greenfield submitted their reports delinquent or late, and Sand City is not in fully compliance with the particular requirements, particularly the maintenance of effort. As a result, future funding will be withheld from those 3 municipalities until all compliance requirements are met. So as you can see, we have 3 cities that are not in compliance at this point. We do put this in the annual report. Thank you for scrolling up so we can see that. And we do put this in the annual report, and that language was prepared by the audit subcommittee. Thank you for those who participated on that. And we'll go into the annual report at this point. So with that, I will open it up for discussion or questions from the committee members. Yes, Brent.
Thank you. For cities that cities have been remiss in not complying with this in the past.
We have in the past, but those have been corrected at this
Do
point.
they usually
Yeah,
get a notice?
the only one I think that has not met qualifications in multiple years is Sand City because of their requirement for maintenance of effort.
Thank you.
And maybe I should maybe defer to Mr. Zeller. Do you have any update on those two cities that filed late? Are they now in compliance?
They are, excuse me. We were able to work with those two jurisdictions to get their reports submitted. So they were turned in after the December 31st deadline, so they were noted as being late. But we did receive the reports and they're otherwise back in compliance now. So the only outstanding jurisdiction still not in compliance, as you mentioned, is Sand City due to their maintenance of effort.
Right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yes, Mr. Herrera.
Salinas was late, but they're in compliance now. Are their funds still going to be withheld for a certain amount of time or?
No, when they're back in compliance, they do start receiving their funding again. Great, yeah. So it's only withheld during the period in which time they are out of compliance. Great. Yes. Kevin?
Yes, two things. First, a correction for Delray Oaks. I believe that the Ray is capitalized.
Oh,
Yeah, if that's correction's been made on the new.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I want to mention is this is a 6th year we've done this comprehensive compliance and accountability report. I think it's excellent. And once again, I hope that the committee will continue doing this for the remaining 24 years. I know that it irritates some people and boy, they'd love to see it go away, but this is what our job is. So let's keep it up, keep doing this.
absolutely. I fully agree. It's great to daylight this as much as we possibly can and also hold those communities, those municipalities feet to the fire, so to speak, that, you know, this funding is important to them as much as it is that they need to meet the requirements of what was passed in the ballot measure. So agree.
I'll move we receive the
Wait.
report as updated.
I'm going to hold off on the
Okay.
motions until we get public comment. That's all right.
Okay.
So we'll go out to the public. Are there any public comments on this particular agenda item related to the Oversight Committee audit report? All right, not seeing any. I'll close public comment.
I'll move
Mr.
we
Rupp.
receive the report subject to the corrections.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. We have completed that agenda item and approved that. Yeah. So we'll go back to item number 4 now, which is receive the presentation on the Marina to Salinas multimodal corridor, which is the MGM Road widening project. And I see we have Idri de los Santos on the line. So you may go ahead and start your presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And for some reason, my bandwidth is a little wonky right now, so I apologize. I have my video off. My audio might cut. So the MGM Parkway project, you could actually skip to the next slide if you like. Can be broken down currently in 4 different categories. We're going to talk about quickly the amenities and improvements to the corridor, the traffic safety, or what those improvements will do for the corridor. Finally, we're going to review quickly where we're at in the current stage, and then finally summarize the funding that we are able to get through Measure X, through Senate Bill 1, local partnership program, and through local funds. Next slide, please. So the corridor itself is a very important location. Not only is it a part of the major regional route from Monterey to Salinas, it also connects our Class 1 bike paths on Reservation Road and along the western portion of MGM Parkway. 2nd Avenue has Class 1 bike paths all the way down to the college. So what this corridor will do, not just widen for regional vehicle traffic, but also provide amenities for regional bicycle traffic and provide those amenities off-road to allow for safer travel through the corridor. Next slide, please. Some of the amenities here, we're going to expand the current roadway from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. We're going to have new stormwater amenities such as bioswales. The bike lanes on the road will be buffered for safer travel and a feel of protection, as well as amenities off-road for the Class 1 bike path you could see on the left-hand side. At the intersections themselves, the pedestrian crossings have been aligned to align better with incoming traffic so that the traffic and the pedestrians could see each other more easily. In order to do that, we also improved and updated all the signage and striping for the roundabouts themselves. So all the site improvements for pedestrians and bicycles, and especially at the roundabouts, have been updated to the latest standards for roundabout design. Next slide, please. You could see we start the roundabout at what is now Imgen Road. We'll most likely be renaming that and coordinating with CSUMB to rename that, as Imgen Road is a little confusing as we head north towards the airport. But that will be the first roundabout. The current issues that we have at that intersection on the left is grading issues. So vehicles tend to travel fast. It's kind of a vehicle trap for motor vehicles who are impaired. And so what we're doing is we're raising the elevation for the intersection, making it a lot safer, slower in terms of through traffic, but also able to navigate through that intersection in a more safe manner. The other intersection that you could see on the page here is with Marina Heights Drive. That intersection will also be widened and be incorporated into the current design we have for Marina Heights and the Sea Haven development. Next slide. Now our busiest intersection along the corridor, Abrams Drive, that will have all 4 direction new amenities for pedestrian and bicycle travel, and incorporates, I believe this is the only 4-way 2-lane roundabout that we have in the county. At Preston, we also have a very interesting grade differential that we're fixing, that we're raising the intersection so it's a better grade, so allow all vehicles and pedestrians entering the intersection to see each other more clearly and safely. Final intersection, the next slide, will be with Reservation Road. This slide here actually shows also improvements to the Army Corps Reserve location. We're coordinating with them for improvements to their frontage and allowing us to install a second right turn lane and improving the intersection as well for better bicycle crossings at the intersection. Next slide. Now that goes through the improvements. Now, specifically for the amenities, we see the safety aspects of those amenities. Roundabouts themselves, as we get this data from the U.S. Department of the Federal Highway Administration, roundabouts, both 1-lane and 2-lane, reduce crashes and the fatality of those crashes across the board. The severity of those crashes from T-bone to head-on are in fact eliminated due to the roundabout's geometry and design. And the next slide goes further into pedestrian impacts and safety improvements. Next slide, please. There we go. So, of course, you can imagine that the slower traffic goes, the less severe an impact with a pedestrian would be. But that depends if with a traffic signal on whether or not vehicles obey the laws of the traffic signal. Not so much with roundabouts. The geometry and design of these roundabouts are for about 20 to 30 mile per hour speeds. You cannot travel through these roundabouts faster than that unless you actually get caught within the roundabout itself. Now we have some of that at the Del Monte Beach roundabout, where vehicles who try to travel fast or impaired vehicles find themselves captured by the roundabout. Our PD actually referred that to as a drunk driver catch or capture device. But the fatalities for pedestrians are greatly reduced due to the slower speeds through the roundabouts. And that's really where our pedestrian crossings and interactions will be with vehicles. Next slide. This concept is a little difficult to understand as the entire corridor right now is about 55 miles per hour speed limit, or 50 miles per hour speed limit, excuse me. We're going to be reducing that speed limit down to 40. And yet, although we are reducing speed and speed through the intersections, the corridor itself, as we have done reviewed with our traffic engineers, will have a faster through time or through travel time, almost a reduction of a full minute. Now, when you think of what a minute does in terms of emergency response effectiveness, in the current corridor as it is today with the traffic signals, if we have any emergencies, if we have power outages, the corridor itself turns into a parking lot, especially during heavy trafficked, what do you call that? Okay, just had a brain fart. When we have heavy traffic times during the day, in the mornings and the evenings, man, I'll remember that word later and then it'll kick me in the butt. But when we have that's when we have these traffic signals with the roundabouts, whether it's a disaster, whether it's a power outage, whether it's an earthquake or a flood, the roundabouts will still continue to function as required. So that 1 minute response time currently is estimated improves our response effectiveness by 15 to 30%. So reducing that minute through the corridor will not only improve through traffic and regional traffic, but also emergency response traffic. And when we reviewed that with our public safety department, they were very encouraged and thankful that these roundabouts were designed with them in mind. Next slide. Now we're going to talk quickly about where we are environmentally. So we have received our incidental take permit through the state California Fish and Wildlife Department. We're working with them currently on some mitigation areas, which we hope to have finalized this month. Potentially next month, depending on how certain boards are meeting and their current time schedule. We're looking to celebrate the construction start date sometime in June. That'll be on the corridor itself. And then our construction timeline, once we start the project, which has already been awarded to our local construction team, Monterey Peninsula Engineering, we're going to be starting sometime in June, and with a about 570-day work period, which will end sometime in September of 2025. Quick review of funding. Measure X is quite a large chunk of this project, and there is no way this project would have got off the ground without the help of Yannicka and Mike and the team at TAMC working hard behind the scenes to make sure that both Measure X and Senate Bill 1 funding was secured. The project life itself has been about 13 years. Ever since I came to Marina, I've been working on Imjin Parkway. And so our partnership with TAMC is by no small means one of the major reasons why this project is getting off the ground. So we thank the TAMC staff and all of you for your efforts in making sure projects of this size, and this is probably the largest project our region has seen in quite some time, gets off the ground and improves the regional and citywide traffic for our community. Final slide. So we briefly talked about the project overview, all the amenities in it. We talked about what traffic safety implies when we have the design of these roundabouts. We talked quickly about our environmental clearance, where we are, where we're hoping to be, and when we're going to be starting and stopping the project. We also talked about where the funding is coming from and thanking the TAMC team for helping us through that. Some next steps, we are going to be launching a project-specific website pretty soon. That website will cover frequently asked questions, newsletters on a fairly frequent basis. We're going to have it in multiple languages, so it's available to the entire community. We're also going to have live video feeds of the project itself and updated traffic related reports to let both regional and local traffic know what's happening with the project. Finally, we will have a stakeholder meeting coming up for all the major stakeholders along the corridor to make sure their major questions are answered, to meet the contractor. And as we review the contractor schedule and traffic control plans, we'll be updating both the website and the stakeholders on a periodic basis. All right, so that in a nutshell is the project overview and where we are. I'm open to any questions.
All right, thank you very much for a great presentation. I will take it out to the committee members for questions. Ms. Brennan?
One of the major benefits of this, which was not mentioned, is a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. That is extremely significant in contrast to signalization. So, you know, that's from an environmental perspective, that's fabulous. Just a question, when the Holman Highway roundabout was under construction, they had videos showing the traffic flow. And this ameliorated a lot of concern that local people who use who will be using the facility had. And I was just wondering if that was going to be part of the outreach.
Yes, we'll have. Yeah, definitely. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Great.
Sorry, were you asking about simulations showing what it will be like in the
Yes.
future?
Yeah,
I don't, Edry, has that been done yet at all? I don't know that that's part of the schedule. To do
We
at
don't.
this stage.
We are working on that. Some members of the public have already requested information on how to traverse through a 2-lane roundabout. How does that work? How do you do that safely? How do large vehicles traverse a 2-lane roundabout? So our design team is working on simulations to have up on the website so people could see how traffic flows through these roundabouts.
that was extremely important to get the public buy-in for the home roundabouts. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what's the incidental take permit species count?
Sure. The major species is the Monterey Sanguilia.
All right. Mr. Rowley?
As I look, as we're finally starting construction, I remember somebody from Caltrans, maybe it was the state, San Luis Obispo said, if you get a big project, it's going to take you at least 10 years. And this one took 13. So the thing is, my question is, we're going to start construction on this project, which is one of the two main ways we get between the economic center of the Monterey Peninsula and the Salinas area. When are we going to start talking seriously about the East Side bypass and improving the Davis Road Bridge? And this needs to be, I mean, we're going to have a hell of a traffic jam. There's a hell of a traffic jam going into Monterey this afternoon. They were just clearing sand. We've really got only two main ways to get between our two economic centers. And I still don't see much serious talk about the East Side bypass. We desperately need that. And so I'd like to suggest putting that on our agenda for future agenda to talk about that. If we can get an update on what's in the mill or not in the mill for the East Side bypass, or a third alternative between Monterey Peninsula and the Salinas area. Because when we start construction on the roundabouts on Salinas Highway, if you think it's tough, this is going to be the main route. And you know, the last count I saw 4 or 5 years ago was the third bypass would handle 13,000 cars a day. That would take a load off of the two main routes that we have now. But I don't hear anything talked about it. So I think maybe if we talk about it a little bit at this committee, maybe we can get something going.
All right, duly noted. Thank you. Yes.
I just really want to emphasize, this is the first regional road project going to construction for Measure X. This is of the regional projects listed in Measure X. The very first regional project was the maintenance and fueling facility that MST built down in King City that we funded. And this is the first road project that we're funding. So we're talking about a $40 million project leveraged with $18 million of Measure X funds. So I just don't want to let that pass. You know, we're kind of excited about that, and the fact that it's going to construction this summer is a really big milestone for us. And I just want to, you know, share my excitement about that because it's something that we've been pushing for a long time. And you know, projects do take a long time. We're working on the other projects, regional projects, to get them into the, you know, coming up the next few years. But this is going to be the first one that goes to construction.
Very good. Oh, down there, Ms. Beach.
Hard to see. Just wanted to ask the presenter if there's any diagrams or images yet of how, because I'm the bicycle advocate, how the pedestrian and bike movement happens at those nodes through the intersection, or maybe it doesn't happen there, but at the roundabouts themselves, if that part's been designed yet, and if so, if you have any detail about that, you might not have it here, but you could send it to me later.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, all the intersections are where our major pedestrian bicycle interchanges are going to happen. There are minimal pedestrian improvements on the southern or eastern side of the roadway. All of them are really on the western or northern side along where the homes are, of course. But yes, we could definitely show or provide an exhibit showing how pedestrian movement is designed at the roundabouts.
Thank you.
All right, other committee member questions?
Just
Ms.
have
Weiss?
have the contracts been let already and which companies?
Yeah, did you hear that? The contracts?
Yes, so we have a contract. Well, the contract was approved through City Council. It's not been executed yet. We're working through that. But Monterey Peninsula Engineering is the contractor. Harrison Associates is our construction manager. And let's see, Denise Duffing Associates, they're the environmental planning consultant working over the project. Those are the major consultants and contractors for the project.
All right. Thank you. If there's no other, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just raised.
Snodgrass.
I just raised. Can somebody tell me what bucket of funds the 18.5 million comes out of?
18.5 is Measure X.
I know it's Measure X, but Measure X goes.
It's the regional share. of
Is it
Measure X.
TAMSI share that comes out of?
The TAMSI, as you call it, the TAMSI share, it's the regional share. for all the
40%
projects.
share.
It's so that we collect it and hold on until these projects are ready to be funded.
So Marina doesn't make any contribution.
They made a
They make the
$2.5 million contribution, and they've been doing the whole project development, project management, and delivering.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you, Edree. When you talked about the reduction in transit time there, I believe it was from 2.9 to 2.1. Is that on existing capacity, or have you built in a little extra capacity that may be using this route because it is now a preferred method of getting to the peninsula?
So that is at project build out. That was the so with current traffic volumes at project build out, that's what the a projection will be. So yes, it's for current volumes. What it takes through the corridor now versus what it's going to take it with the roundabouts in.
Okay, and then I noticed on the diagrams that you have a raised median in some of the photos or the diagrams. Is that raised median going to be the entire length of the corridor?
Most of the length of the corridor, yes. We do have certain areas where large vehicle traffic, that's more towards Reservation Road, where large vehicles need to make left-hand turns or need to exit onto Imjin Parkway, and that's where we remove the medians. But for the majority of the corridor, we're going to have a median along the center line.
Excellent, thank you. And then this is a significant widening of the roadway there. So have we worked out the right-of-way requirements? And particularly where you're actually bending the road around to make the roundabouts?
So I actually gave the presentation off the cuff because all my notes were frozen with my great bandwidth here. But yes, one of the points I had was that it took 13 years, not just because of design and not because of environmental. Right-of-way was a big category. We have many stakeholders along the corridor to which we needed to get construction easements, slope easements. We needed to purchase right-of-way. We needed to acquire it. We need to establish right-of-way where we had current city property. So yes, right-of-way clearance was a major hurdle that we accomplished with Caltrans and with TAMC support.
All right, and then my last question is related to truck traffic and big rigs. Have the roundabouts been sized to handle the capacity of large traffic like that?
Yes, I don't have the model of truck, but all the major trucks that we currently accommodate for on reservation and Del Monte and Imgen, where we go through our major roundabouts. All the roundabouts were designed. In fact, the one at Del Monte Beach was designed for the trucks that go to the Dole plant, which I believe are the double trailers. So we're accommodating for some of the major regional truck traffic routes and the vehicles that travel these routes.
All right, thank you for answering those questions, and seeing no other questions from the committee members in the room, I'll open it up to public comment. If there's any comments from the public on this particular item, please raise your hand. Up. I can't read that. Howard Fossler, is that what that is? Go ahead, Mr. Fossler. You're
Yes.
on mute.
Hi,
There
thank
you
you. I was just wondering why there is no roundabout at Reservation Road. And I was also wondering why the speed limit was reduced by 20%.
Sure. I could answer the first one regarding reservation. The amount of through traffic and turning movements at the intersection itself would have required, actually, it exceeded the requirements for a roundabout. So every single intersection wasn't initially designed for a roundabout. We conducted what's known as an intersection control evaluation, or an ICE study, to see whether or not a signal or a roundabout would be sufficient for the intersection and for the movements, and especially for the volumes. So at Imgen and Reservation, the intersection control evaluation, or the ICE study, did not warrant a roundabout at that location. The roundabout itself, if one was to be installed, would be rather large, most likely a 3-lane, to which we didn't really have the right-of-way for. There's multiple aspects to why Reservation and Imgen was not designed for a roundabout, but specifically traffic volumes, safety, and movements are kind of the 3 main keys for that. The other question was, oh man, I'm sorry.
go. Reduction in speed limit.
Thank you. So the corridor itself, fast travel through the corridor is key. Now, fast travel does not really require fast speeds. The reduction in speed is one for safety. We do have bicycles on the roadway itself, but also safety for the vehicles themselves. We don't want vehicles to travel the corridor at unsafe speeds for their own control. Going into the roundabouts requires significant control of your vehicle. So roundabout speeds are usually tend to be on the slower end of going through intersections. It's not like going through a traffic signal. And although the reduction in speed is there, it doesn't mean that, as we showed earlier, it's going to be a reduction or an increase in travel time through the corridor. It's actually a reduction in travel time. So yes, the speeds are slowing, and they're designed intentionally for that, but it will also, with the design, improve the through volume and the safety of the corridor as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fossler. Any other questions from the public?
Yes,
Ms. Aragon.
Agron.
I'm sorry, I
Agron.
can't read from here.
Hey, Graham.
Go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned with the incidental environmental take that the major one was the Sangilia, which is a very small endangered plant. Are there any animal species that would be endangered?
No major impacts to animal species. There are a few animal species to which are they are seasonally habitating this corridor, and we are mitigating for those. But no, there are no major animal impacts due to the project.
Thank you.
Did we lose the audio feed?
Uh-oh.
You may have lost the audio feed, or
Yes, we're back.
Yes, we can hear you.
Was that us that went out? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Us that went out. Okay. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So Edri, the question was, were there any animal endangered species involved in the incidental take permit?
there were animals identified, none of which are being impacted, and the impacts that we will have with the migratory or seasonal animal movements are being mitigated for. So we are not impacting, we're not majorly impacting any animal species in the corridor.
Right. Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the committee for a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snodgrass. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you, Edri, for the report. Really appreciate you being with us today, and good luck with the rest of the project.
Thank you. And look out for the project website. They'll be coming up shortly.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, then we're going to jump back to item number 6, which is the Senior and Disabled Transportation Cycle 3 Awards. And there's a recommendation there for various different funding opportunities, I'll say. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Hernandez, Assistant Transportation Planner with the agency, and I'm also the project coordinator for the Senior Disabled Transportation Program. Today, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of the current status of the program in Cycle 2. We're going to kind of talk about our Cycle 3 process and our scoring process with the grant review subcommittee that I asked a few of you to participate back in our, because the November of last year. And then we'll take a look at the award recommendations. So if you go to the next slide. So now Cycle 2. Cycle 2 is a 3-year process. It begins from fiscal year 2020 and ends and will end June 30th of this year. There are 2 quarters remaining of Cycle 2. So for our claimants, they submit a claim every quarter for the amount of funding that they would like for that they're asking for that period. And so there's 2 of them left. And for those 2 quarters remaining, there is $253,925 remaining to date. So our award recipients, our grantees will have those 2 quarters until June 30th to use those remaining funds. And since we're nearing the end of Cycle 2, we do ask from our grantees to submit a closeout report of the activities that they did in Cycle 2 and to submit their final claims by July 31st. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So these pie charts are just showing you just where each grantee is at with their funds. So the blue is indicating how much they have spent to this day, and the light orangish is showing how much is remaining. So we could see that ITN, Monterey County and Partnership with Children, they are pretty much almost there at using their full funding amount for cycle 2. Alliance on Aging has 28% left, and it's probably likely that they may probably also use the full funding amount by the end of this fiscal year. The only one who still has a large amount left is Currents Pool. They've only used 30% of their award, but that is primarily due to the fact that they were shut down in COVID because of COVID for half of the cycle, beginning from 2020, and then they did not open until late of 2021. So yes, they have 62% remaining from their award. And go ahead and go to the next slide. So for cycle 3, $1.5 million is available for cycle 3, and it'll go for fiscal years 23-24 into 2026. And we received 5 complete applications from when we opened the call projects late of last year. And pretty much for these 5 applicants, 4 of them are returning from cycle 2, so all the previous grantees that you just saw. And then 1 of them is coming back from cycle 1. That one particular applicant that's coming back to cycle 1 is the Blind and Visually Impaired Center. Next slide. So as we are prepping for cycle 3, and late last year, we had the call for projects. The projects that you saw there, they were due December 31st. What then happens is that we form a grant review subcommittee made up of some of the fellow XTALK members, TAMC staff, and a member from the MST Mobility Advisory Committee. So from XTALK, we had Paula Getzman, who I don't think she's here today, and then Kevin Dayton was able to help us by participating in the site visits. And then Teresa Wright and myself were also part of the subcommittee. Diana Jimenez, she is from the MST Mobility Advisory Committee, who volunteered to participate. And so what we did is that we got together, everybody scored the proposals, and we got together to come up with a list of follow-up questions that we would ask for each to each applicant. Since the field site visit is a requirement for the program guidelines, we did our best to conduct the site visits now that's everything opened again in person. Although due to our site visits occurred in January, so during that time we had the Atmospheric River event. So we were able to conduct our site visits with mostly all the applicants. The only ones that we moved those site visits onto Zoom hybrid format was just for ITN and partnership. And then from there we got our list of follow-up questions answered, which would then determine how which would help us determine the subcommittee in determining the funding distribution. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is just the ranking criteria that each individual subcommittee member based their scores on. So, and that the applicant had to prove of on top of. So the program purpose of goals, that is basically just asking applicants what's the overall scope of their project and what are the goals that they wish to achieve with this funding. The program benefits, that is asking basically how does this project benefit seniors and people with disabilities. Feasibility is the ability to actually show that the project can actually be executed within the time frame that they have of those 3 years. Geographic equity was a component that's been asked in the past in terms of trying to see if the proposed project can cover the scope of Monterey County not necessarily just certain parts of the county. And cost effectiveness, whether the project is, the cost of the project is effective enough to actually be executed, and if it makes sense to for the amount that we spent. So on the next slide. So with the subcommittee, it was very challenging for the subcommittee to determine the funding distribution because one of the main components this time versus the previous cycle reviews is that the excess amount, or what I have there on as labeled as shortfall, from the total grant request, if we were to find all applicants with their total request, we would be over 676,000 above the 1.5 million that is available for this program and for this cycle. So what the subcommittee did is that the subcommittee took a look at different funding options and funding scenarios that might work as best ways to fund the applicants. One thing that the subcommittee found is that with the screening of each applicant and doing the follow-up site, the field visits and scoring, is that the subcommittee saw that there was not one applicant that they didn't think was not qualified. They saw that all applicants were unique in the type of project that they were delivering and the needs that they were trying to address. So one of the concerns for the subcommittee is that they did not want to leave one of the applicants completely out. And also because since a lot of them right now are receiving funding currently for cycle 2. So the subcommittee came up with 3 different funding options, and the preferred option is to award grantees with the 25% reduction from their original request. So what you see on the highlighted green is what the subcommittee would be recommending for funding. Option 2, we looked at, and option 2 would basically be as if we were to distribute the funding based on how it's been done traditionally in past cycles, which is by applicants their full amounts, and whoever's after in the ranking process just gets whatever's left over. But the issue that the subcommittee saw is that they would leave the last 2 applicants complete out, and then Alliance on Aging would only receive about a third of their original request, which would probably at that point would not be feasible for them to actually execute for that amount of money. And then option 3, I know for us in here, it's that screen's in the way, but that's basically a reduction based on rank, a 20% reduction based on rank. So for example, if your partnership with children who scored first, you would see 100% of your original request. ITN would receive 80% of their original request, and it goes so on and so forth with current school receiving 20%. But the subcommittee saw that even with that, it's kind of more, option 3 was more the lose-lose factor, because only one applicant would receive their full amount, and the last 3 applicants would still hardly receive anything for even them to execute that work. So one thing to just clarify in option 1, so the top 4 applicants, as shown, that those numbers in the highlighted green are the 25% reduction amounts. Current pool, you may be wondering, well, 78,000 is actually more reduced than 25,000. Current pool, since they ranked the lowest, the subcommittee thought, well, maybe it would be best, well, they would have to obviously receive the 100, they would just receive funding that's left over. Because if we only did a 25% reduction through all 5 applicants, we would still have $136,000 in excess. So current pool would be receiving the leftover amount, but there is a request, and at the last slide, I'll have it there in detailed, that the subcommittee recommended. And what the subcommittee is recommending for current pool is that while they'll be receiving the 78,000 for cycle 3 funds, the subcommittee is suggesting to allow current pool to extend their time of cycle 2 because they were shut down because of COVID, since they won't be able to use all their fundings for by the end of this month, and extend it by one year for cycle 2. In terms of how much they'll receive, it depends on how much they spend for these next 2 quarters, but that is the recommendation that the subcommittee is making based on what's shown here. And then, yeah, and then you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So, so I'll just go over briefly based on what the plans are for these projects for each award recipient. So Partnership for Children, if we go with the subcommittee's recommendation, they would be receiving $345,000 for their project on transportation services for children living with severe illnesses. So what this project would entail is that Partnership for Children, they offer transportation services for children with illnesses in hospitals outside of Monterey County, primarily up towards the Stanford Children Medical Center over there. And what they offer 2 things. They offer direct transportation services with a professional driver that drives them to their medical appointments, or if the family is able to, they do provide gas card subsidies for families of low income who might have gone up north because of issues with the gas costs and whatnot. And you go ahead, go to the next slide. ITN Monterey County, they would be receiving $705,000, and their project is on expanding dignified transportation in Monterey County for seniors, veterans, and visually impaired adults. In cycle 2, ITN and has partnered a lot with the Alliance on Aging to expand their services into South and North County. I think it was in 2021 and 2022, they actually ITN launched their service called the Valley Line, and then in South County, and North Line in North County. And basically the Valley Line, the North County covers all of unincorporated North County. And the Valley Line covers, for at least Measure X portions, I think it covers up down to Soledad, but with the help of Measure X, they are able to further expand using other funding sources to expand their service into King City as well. And if you don't know who ITN is, I actually forgot to mention their way of transportation is to provide 24/7, 7 days a week, armed door-to-door service, or as I like to call personally, like the Ubers for seniors. So, so for their projects, they are planning to, for cycle 3, they are planning to continue expanding in these areas and just increasing ridership in both North and South County. For the next slide. Next, we have Alliance on Aging. So Alliance on Aging, they have been a key partner with ITN in terms of doing outreach to promote their services. And a lot of the outreach actually has been done for the Valley and North Line has been done through Alliance on Aging. Alliance on Aging has been through their SoCo socials and partnering with Meals on Wheels. They've connected with seniors to not only connect with ITN's transportation services, but all the other services that are available to seniors, like medical services, helping with senior benefits and other transportation services like ST as well. So their project, Senior Transportation Coordination Project, Phase 3, that would continue working with ITN on the expansion of ITN service in North and South County. And recently I actually learned that Alliance on Aging is actually working beyond further South County into the even more remote areas of Lockwood. And if Paula gets to move here, I probably would have let her speak a bit because she did contribute a bit to that coordination with just trying to assess the needs of further. So yes, and then the next slide. So the next award would be for the Blind Vision Pet Center. Again, they would be returning from cycle 1. Their project orientation and mobility trainings that is focused on having a mobility specialist go and visit people with vision impairments and actually visit them to actually kind of train them how to use the transportation network and to kind of show them what options we have. Primarily, their transfer, as I learned when we did the field visits, is people with blind and vision impairments. Their main method of transportation is the MST bus network. And some do use ITN services for those who are seniors and are part of this program as well. One of the goals for the orientation mobility trainings is just to reduce the amount of travel time for people with visual impairments to travel so far away for an appointment or and such. So what BVIC plans to do is also open up a center at Soul to satisfy the needs of South County clients, because right now they have a place in Pacific Road and a place in Springs. Next slide. And then finally, Current's Memorial Pool, their project transportation for seniors and people with disabilities to receive therapeutic aquatic services. So, so one thing to note is that we have been in communication with all of the recipients, and they all have agreed to adjust their scope of work from their original request with a 25% reduction. So a lot of what I'm explaining right now is pretty much the kind of work that they still intend to work on, even with 20% reduction. And for Current's Memorial Pool, since they received the lower end of the stick, they are planning to, one of their biggest issues, at least for Current's Pool, was just the cost of ridership. The subcommittee was looking at about almost $400 in cost per client. So that's one of the issues that we had. But then again, they saw that the need is a lot of these clients don't have any other means to travel around with the exception of specialized transportation vehicles, as many of them are paralyzed. And so what this project entails is to provide subsidies for clients who would attend the Current's Pool for therapeutic services. And with the amount of that would be moved, well, with the amount extended from cycle 2 and this amount for cycle 3, I believe they are planning to have the program rolled for 2 years out of the 3-year period. So next slide. So I'm going to leave it at that. Basically, just recapping again, what the subcommittee has recommended to XTOG is to recommend that the AMC board award the Measure X Senior Disabled Transportation Cycle 3 funds as follows. And then for number 2, to recommend that the TAMC board approve an extension to the deadline for Current's Memorial Pool to use their Cycle 2 funding by 1 year. So I will leave it at that and answer any questions.
All right, thank you for the presentation. And committee members, Mr. Rowley.
Just a quick question. Was it the Blind Center that was having trouble hiring an executive director or something? Seems to me I recall. Has that been all rectified?
Yes, I believe so. Stephen Macias is now the executive director, but at the time for Cycle 2, they did not submit an application.
Yeah, because they were having troubles. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're studied out now.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good organization. So that's great to hear that.
Yes, Mr. Hubbard.
Yeah, do you have any sense from your conversations with these groups if that 25% reduction from what they were seeking is going to jeopardize the viability of any of their projects? Or is there any of these where 25% less than what they're asking for might as well be zero?
Yeah, well, we had conversations with these applicants, and for every applicant, they want to say, well, if we get the full amount, that would be better off, because that would do everything. But they did say that they were able to work with that 25%. They would just have to make adjustments to some of their scopes of works. Their intent and goals for the project are still there. They would just have to make some minor adjustments and here and there. For example, for Partnership for Children, I know originally the plan was to, because right now for cycle 2, they have unlimited gas card subsidies that they give out. For this adjustment, they would limit it to 4 per month or per week or so. I have Jennifer Rumors, Executive Director of Partnership for Children, to also answer any questions like regards to what they're working on. But yeah, they would be able to adjust with that.
Yes, Ms. Mustard.
The $1.5 million budget, where does that come from? And what I mean by that is, when I look at the total measure request of 2.1, we're collecting more revenue than we thought we would. Is there any way to bump up that budget? Go ahead and fund them at the full request. Or why are we limited to 1.5 million?
The 1.5 million has been set based on when Measure X was created. And in terms of bumping up those numbers, not quite sure. I mean, I would imagine it would need some kind of board approval with Measure X funding, but yeah.
I'll add to that. That's a very good question. That's something we've been talking about internally at Tennessee staff, because the Measure X revenues have been quite a bit higher than the forecasted when the measure was adopted. Right now, when we have the projects and the programs had a dollar amount listed when Measure X was passed. So to change from that, we'd have to go through, we have to evaluate how we can make that change. Right now, what we're doing is saving the money and paying for each of the regional projects as they come up. So that $18 million, $18.2 million for engine that we talked about earlier. The excess revenue that we've accrued, collected, is allowed us to pay for that without having to do any kind of financing, cover that $18 million. So we're be able to do a bit of pay as you go for projects, whereas we've always assumed that we're going to have to do some type of bonding or financing for our regional projects as the bigger projects start to come and receive their funds. But in the next few years, I think we'll have paid for a few of the regional projects and be in a position where we'll have a discussion here at the XTalk and at the board on how we might change the formula or the distribution or how that's calculated. But we didn't want to do that right now until we got through a few of the bigger regional projects.
Talking about a vote to change it?
I don't know if it needs a vote. I think it could be a board policy as long as all the jurisdictions agree to it. But we haven't done the full research on that. We've been waiting, but that's our intent, is to bring back a proposal for discussion at the XTalk and at the board.
Yes, Ms. Beach.
So, Todd, are you saying that the reason you're able to use the excess revenue to replace financing is that category was not limited by a dollar amount, whereas some categories of Measure X spending have a dollar cap at this point?
All of the regional projects and programs have a dollar cap. It's just that because we've collected more funds earlier than we anticipated, we can pay for some of the regional project dollar amounts in full versus having to finance.
No, I get what you're doing. What I'm curious about is that so somehow when we set up this and got these unanticipated windfalls, when we passed Measure X, we didn't have a location for major excesses to flow to. So it's sort of discretionary, I guess, is what I'm asking. In other words, there's no policy that says, oh, we have a limit of 1.5 here. If we have excess, we can
you know, that.
Actually, there is. Page 27 of the transportation, what is it, safety, right, in 2016, I remember this, it says here that, use of excess revenues. If a 5-year average of revenues exceeds the estimates in this plan, funding may be allocated in this order of priority by the TMC board. 1, to cover cost increases or new features and projects on the list, which I'm assuming this would cover. 2, to incorporate new technologies in the plan. And 3, to add new projects to the list, which I figure what Tom brought up about the East Side Parkway would fall under that. So I think, Mr. Chair, on this matter, since we now have a 5-year average of revenues and it has exceeded the estimates, would this committee be able to, and maybe we need to put this on the next agenda, initiate this discussion? Or would you prefer to have the TMC board do it? I know some people on this committee would probably love to start working on this right away rather than waiting for yours.
Well, I think this committee is a good starting point for that discussion. I mean, it is about how the Measure X revenue is being used. But we just hit the 5-year period, so I was not planning on kicking this off right away, especially as we're just now kind of waiting for the next couple of the regional projects to come in and knowing what the dollar amounts needed for construction are. Let's think we can agendize this in a near term.
And the other thing is Highway 156, the shortfall on that. Did you ever come up with funds for that?
There are a lot of projects that are short funds, but there are only a few projects that are listed in the ordinance for Measure X. So it's if we're going to identify a brand new project, that becomes quite a bit bigger.
So just the roundabouts at the west end, that's funded though, right?
Just the interchange at Castroville Boulevard.
Yeah. Okay.
But there are plenty of needs around the county. So if we're going to talk about new projects, then that's a quite a bit bigger discussion that I think TAMC staff needs to kind of think about and bring a proposal and start a quick discussion.
Well, I think it'd be good to start that discussion. We can agendize that either next time or the time after.
Yeah, it will.
Because we've already kind of identified some agenda items for our next meeting. I have a question relating to the extension of the deadline for Kearns Memorial Pool for their cycle 2. I mean, that's obviously kind of setting a precedent. Is that going to set that precedent? And is that unfair to those who currently have cycle 2 funding that they can't complete?
Yeah, so because I know this was also been something that was from cycle 1 to cycle 2. But yeah, for the exception of Kearns Pool, is I believe they were the only ones that could not use their facility for the entire COVID period versus the other applicants. They were, while the other applicants were limited to some of the work they could do, they were still able to, they were still expending funds during the times that Kearns Pool wasn't. So.
Okay, and then what happens if that 250,000 that's not used at this point comes to the end at cycle 2? Where does that 250,000 go? Can that be added to awards that we're doing in cycle 3?
I think that could, if the committee suggests that. I know by default, whatever, well, with the exception of Kearns, but say the other applicants don't use their full funding amount, by default, that would just go for future cycles. But I think the committee has to just in the previous cycles that they can move that forward to cycle 3.
Okay. Any other question, Mr. Barrera?
So all these organizations they serve South County?
Yes, and that's actually something I forgot to mention in terms of areas that they serve. So Partnership with Children and Blind and Visually Impaired Center, they're able to cover all of Monterey County, in all areas, as north as Pajaro, as all the way south to Parkville. ITN and Alliance on Aging, since a lot of their work kind of goes hand in hand, they have been working and will probably continue to work in the major South County cities, so like King City, Soledad, Dallas, and then they'll also be continuing working in North County. And then for Currents Pool, so they, since their cost has been higher, they've been pretty limited to just going as far as Soledad. But that's just one of the concerns that the subcommittee had is, you know, like whether they'll be able to like expand in the future or maybe with their higher costs, they're probably just gonna stay small or go smaller with the coverage area. So yeah.
You mentioned something about the blind and visually impaired center, about someone opening one in Soledad.
Yeah, that's what they're planning to do with the Blind Vision Impaired Center. They want to open an office location in Soledad where they can have some of their equipment and tools for their clients. So then that way they don't have to plan a trip to go up to Salinas.
And on that special subcommittee, I saw the name Diana Jimenez up there.
Yeah.
Is that Diana Jimenez from Castro?
Yes. Yes.
And also, we're in cycle 3 right now. All the awardees, are there ever any new organizations that,
New organization in terms of recruiting?
or is it usually the same ones that apply?
Yeah, we've just been getting the same ones. And we have kind of asked, and we kind of actually like went around just not as strongly going out, but just like we've asked folks to like for that there's this funding opportunity for available for other nonprofits as well, if other nonprofits are.
Because last time for the senior and disabled transportation, we went out to Soledad and we had requested maybe Tamsi going out there to show people how to do this process, you know, because a lot of people don't understand. There might not be any nonprofits out there, but since it's the same organizations that keep on applying, have a little issue with that.
Right.
You know?
So we could definitely keep that noted and
Yes.
as we like move forward with like, because every cycle will also have the opportunity to also update the program guidelines too. So that's will be like good opportunities to kind of do more outreach on this program.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Dayton?
Yeah, I just want to know, I'm on the Monterey Salinas Transit Measure Q Oversight Committee, which also provides grants for senior and disabled programs. And I know at least 2 of these organizations also get Measure Q money. And I mentioned both of that Oversight Committee and at this one, the agencies need to work together and make sure that the grants are going to the exact same thing. So, you know, without having a cross-reference, I don't think we know, but we should always keep in mind there are 2 different agencies using sales tax money for what's the same broad purpose.
Yep. Good point. All right, not seeing any other questions from committee members, so I'll open it up to the public, and if anyone has a comment on this agenda item and the recommendation, please raise your hand at this point. And not seeing any hands going up. So, thank you.
Oh, I'm
All right.
actually, sorry, this is Jennifer Ramirez. I'm not, my button to raise my hand isn't working for some reason. I'm sorry about that.
All right, go ahead.
So my name is Jennifer Ramirez, and I'm the Executive Director for Partnership for Children, which is one of the organizations that is applying for funding. And I wanted to first off thank the committee for all of the work that you do in reviewing these proposals. And I know that it's really difficult to determine how to allocate funding because all of the organizations are doing very impactful work within the community. I did want to just respond to some of the questions around the impact on decreasing funds below the amount that was requested specifically for our organization. So we would be able to still provide the program and the services under the contract. However, we would have to significantly reduce our services for the children that we serve. So as Aaron mentioned, we provide gas assistance and rides, direct rides for children who have medical appointments at specialty hospitals up in the Bay Area. Currently, we don't have any limitations, but if we reduced funding by that 25%, we will have to go in and set up limitations for those families in terms of how many rides and how many gas assistance requests that they can submit per month. So that would have an impact on access to medical care for these children. The other piece of it is part of our proposal is the purchase of one vehicle to be able to maintain a total number of 5 vehicles on our fleet. And so that would be potentially an item that we would not be able to purchase. And so therefore we would have a maximum of 4 rides per day versus the current 5. And so that would limit our ability to provide up to 5 families or 5 children with transportation per day. So we would be able to provide the services, and we are very thankful for whatever allocation that the committee decides to recommend. I did want to just inform the committee about the actual impacts on the kids that we serve.
All right, very good. Thank you. And yes, Jessica McKillop, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Oversight Committee, and all who has worked continuously on the Measure X funding for all of our organizations. I am the Executive Director of IT in Monterey County, and I've been very grateful to say that this funding specifically has launched both of our rural projects. As Aaron described, both Valley Line and North Line launched, really still while we were surrounded with a lot of fear over COVID. And we've been blessed to have private riders joining. Our partnership with Aspire Health Plan has allowed for a lot of those Valley Line rides to happen. And the steering committees that were formed as part of our federal project, which aligned with this expansion effort, really allowed us to involve the community to ensure that we were developing a transportation model that was relevant, needed, and affordable. So those parameters are on our website. I don't want to bother any of you with all of the logistics of it, but I just want to say thank you to Aaron and all that who have served on our steering committee and all of the input that you have given us. We're very excited for those projects to be going. And we realize that the funding is vital to keeping those projects alive and growing, and we continue to do everything we can to build other partnerships and find other funding measures to allow for our what we're calling pilot projects to become permanent projects as we move into cycle 3 funding. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate it very much. Not seeing any other hands going up. I'm going to close public comment at this point, bring it back to the committee. And first, I want to thank the Grant Review Committee for their work on this. I know it takes a lot of time to go through all these applications and really appreciate all the effort there. And then I'm going to ask if we can have the slide that shows the recommendations put back up on the screen for us so that we can see those numbers in real time.
Certainly, just give me one moment.
Sure. And then Ms. Brennan, did you have a comment?
I was going to make a motion.
Okay, let's wait for the screen to come up. Thank you. So the recommendation is to make a recommendation to the board of TAMSI for the Measure X Senior and Disabled Transportation Cycle 3 awards. You can see the dollars per amount for each of those organizations. And then part 2 is to recommend that the board approve an extension for the deadline to Kearns Memorial Pool for their Cycle 2 funding for 1 year. And I was going to ask the committee members, are we comfortable with number 2 there? Because I have a little bit of concern about setting a precedent that we've established rules and lines and guidelines for these grant funding. And while I think that's maybe a compelling reason, is anybody else concerned about that one?
I think that it's a good, it's very, very slim financing. Volunteers, they've always had trouble with volunteers. And the transportation is the key to their success. And I think one of the things we talked to Teresa before, the last cycle, they were trying to come up with some less expensive transportation. And that was a key thing that was really hurting them. But anyway, the shutdown for a year, it's really a grassroots type organization. It's in a neighborhood, that a single family neighborhood, but they minimize the impact on the neighborhood. They've really gone the extra mile to try and be successful. So I think we need to give them a break.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Hibbert.
Yeah, I think that it's a precedent, but I think it's a good precedent. I think it shows that we have some flexibility around this. I mean, it was a pandemic, it was national emergency, it was a state emergency. And I think in these cases where, especially when we're kind of subject to more climate related emergencies with the wildfires and things that we've been having, I think that it sets a precedent to say that where these projects may be impacted by that stuff in the future, we have the flexibility to allow them to still secure the funding and do their work.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Beach.
I would just suggest a quick rewording, a friendly amendment to number 2 in order to just answer your concern. And you could simply say, recommend that the board make an exception due to the COVID pandemic interference or whatever to the deadline. That way, you know, it's a one-time exception. Of course, any future body can make a similar exception, but it just reemphasizes that this is not some kind of policy change. That would be my friendly amendment to number 2 if people like that idea.
Yeah, no, I was going to kind of suggest the same thing too, that we have some language in there that notes that it's an exception due to the pandemic. So did you want to
I'm
make a
going to
motion?
move the first recommendation, which is the allocation of cycle 3 awards.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a first and a second on the number 1 recommendation there. Any further comments? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, then we'll take a motion on number 2, if anybody wants to do that.
I will recommend, I move that we approve the extension for Kearns Memorial Pool for cycle 2 funds based on the pandemic.
So adding the language for the exception for the pandemic. Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Discussion.
We should do discussion before the final vote.
I didn't see any hands, so go ahead.
You didn't ask for it.
No. Did I do that? Oops. My bad. Sorry. Go ahead. Discussion.
I don't know if it's a family amendment or just maybe make note in the minutes so that, you know, when we look at this application again next year, that we really look carefully, did they meet their full funding with a full year of normal service, right, under no pandemic? So just that we are consciously looking to, did they expend all their funds? So a year from now, let's make point of really analyzing it with that eye. Did they get back to full capacity?
Thank you. And I think we can note that in the minutes, so that'll be fine. Thank you. That's a good suggestion. All right, thank you. Appreciate the presentation and the discussion, Erin. Thank you for doing that. We'll move on to the next item, which is announcements.
So just one question. In the past, we've alternated these meetings when we had them in Salinas and on the peninsula. So the Marina Library would become another option for us. And so I wanted to just check in with this committee to see if you would like to have the next meeting on the Monterey Peninsula and more than likely the Marina Library, public library.
I think that this location is pretty centrally located, you know, for South County.
It's your decision. So if you want to keep it here, we can keep it here. I know in the past there was discussion about alternating the two. So if this works, we'll just make this.
I think it's good to keep it in one location and make sure that we're being cognizant of driving times all the way around. So I'm in favor of keeping it here also.
Can I just add that?
Any other comments?
I'd be a little bit more comfortable if we just fact-based. I don't know if, you know, I traveled a while. I don't mind coming here in the future, but I just wonder if how far folks went and we could take a little straw poll or something, so we know if we're inconveniencing everybody. then we probably should move to a single location elsewhere.
Well,
But I just curious, we could take a little straw poll maybe.
Well, the factor, just if I can just add, the biggest factor has been the people that are coming from Lockwood, South County.
yes,
But so they travel the furthest.
Okay,
So this is convenient for them. Going to the peninsula is not.
certainly not.
That's a
So,
long
so
travel.
are the miles, does that put us in center? Is that correct of the people that are attending?
I would think so.
Okay, that was my question. I just wanted to confirm whether that was actually the case.
And then going forth, ultimately, what we'd like to do is to get the first room that's available there when it becomes available. And that way we won't have to go through the security location. So until that becomes available, this will be our room. And then once we can switch, we'll switch over there. So we don't have to worry about the security issue. Okay.
all right.
That's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. I guess I should ask for public comment on that. All right, not seeing any. I'll close public comment on that. So we are now at item 8. The next meeting will be Tuesday, August 15th at 2 p.m., probably in this room. Thank you very much. And so with that, I will say we are adjourned. Thank you all for
outside.
coming.
Let's take our photo.
Oh, yeah.
Put the green on there.
Leave.
Do not leave. We take a group photo.
Breathe, we'll get you.